Hey there, welcome to episode 31 of the Golf Never Sleeps podcast. Ryan Robler, I'm your golf coach, and this week my podcast might be a little bit on the shorter side, but it's because I'm only talking about one thing. And the thing I'm going to talk about today is there is one thing that really separates the players of mine that improve faster than others. And I'll preface this by saying this is irrelevant of a player's ability. It doesn't matter their handicap. It doesn't matter their age. It doesn't matter their club head speed. It doesn't matter anything about those. The more I've been teaching and the more that I've been working in a model where I'm spending a lot of times with players, there's something that's really starting to show itself more and more and more. And the thing is, the number one thing right now for me that I believe helps my players get better faster compared to other players is how often they check in with me. And what I mean by check in with me, it can be a wide range of things. It can be them sending me videos of their golf swing. It can be them sending me a text message. It can be them sending me an audio message before a practice session, after a practice session, during a round of golf, after a round of golf, a tournament round, a practice round. The players that communicate with me the most get more out of their time with me, and I believe honestly they get better faster. What often happens is a player will have a lesson, and regardless of the frequency of lessons or amount of times I see them, whether on course, whatever, what happens is if I don't hear from them in between lessons, they've played a bunch of golf, they've done a bunch of practicing, I hope. A lot has happened. I'm sure that they've either gotten better or gotten worse. I'm sure that there's been questions that they've wanted to ask, maybe some observations that they've made. But what oftentimes happens is that information never gets to me. I never get to see the golf swing until the next time I see them in person. They have the question, but then the next time I see them, I ask them if they have any questions or anything that's been kind of noodling around their mind, and they tend to forget because we tend to forget things. But it kind of hit me lately because I've been away for the past few weeks. I'm home now and I'm happy to be back home, but I've been away the last few weeks. And a message to all of my players is that if you're part of one of my programs, you have access to me essentially whenever you want. You message me, I will reply. It might not always be right there, but I will always reply. And hey, I hope you're enjoying this podcast episode. If you are, I have a favor to ask. If you're watching on YouTube, please make sure that you subscribe to this channel, like this video, and make sure you hit that bell to make sure you get notified on when a new episode drops. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts, please make sure you subscribe there as well. But if you could leave me a rating, wherever you're listening or watching, if you do those things for me, it really helps the podcast grow and also motivates me to put out more content. And as always, on any platform, if you ever have any questions, please reach out, let me know. I answered every comment. Now let's get you back to your episode. I had a couple of cases that really struck me because we're in the month of January right now, and especially for some of my juniors and college players, December is kind of a weird month. There's normally not a lot going on competition-wise. They're finishing up exams or finishing up a semester, and then there's the holidays. So usually December is a pretty lax time. Obviously with Christmas and New Year's and different stuff like that. I know for a lot of them, they're not working on their game that hard for that period of time, which is fine. Like they're totally allowed to do that. But once January hits, like we start a new semester, we start a new year, and the light kind of switches like, ooh, like competition season is coming. So for a lot of them, they're getting back into the swing of things, we could say. And obviously with that, with a little bit of time off, there can become some rust and some bad habits and different things like that. The point I'm trying to make is now that I'm back teaching in person after being away for a few weeks, I saw most of my players over the last 4 or 5 days. And the thing that really stuck out to me is there's some players that I've asked them to check in, and you can only bug them so many times. Ultimately, it's their decision, right? There are some players that I could tell maybe weren't working on their game that much and definitely weren't checking in with me. And we were further behind than others, meaning that they're unhappy with the way they're hitting it, or they weren't progressing, they weren't understanding concepts that we had talked about a couple of months ago, because there just hasn't been that back and forth communication. Now, on the other hand, there's a couple players that they check in like 90% of the times that they're doing something golf related, whether it be sending videos or sending texts or asking questions. And the really nice part is with a couple of them, we had some fantastic lessons yesterday. And that was on the back of, I hadn't seen them in almost 5 or 6 weeks in person, but there was constant flow of communication back and forth, sending videos, asking questions. And in 2 cases, these 2 players up until our lesson on Saturday weren't necessarily hitting it that well. And one of them was really unhappy with the way things were progressing. But the nice part is we were able to talk through it and break it down to little steps. And it's like, when you practice today, I just need you to focus on this, send me some video. And we did that a few times. And then we really had a breakthrough in our lesson yesterday. And that was 100% set up by the work we had done in the weeks prior. Where if that player hadn't checked in, if they hadn't sent video, if they hadn't sent in the questions that they had, they'd have probably showed up a little bit more disappointed than normal, a little bit maybe honestly grumpy or disgruntled with the way that they're hitting it. And that would have really affected our lesson and delayed our progress. And that really got me thinking. Thinking back over the past few years, I'm not even talking about in the off season. I'm talking about during season, during competitive season, during busy season. I can honestly say that the players that improve the most are the ones that I hear from the most. And I feel I do a good job communicating to all of them that they can reach out to me whenever they want. That's part of the deal. And some people have the interest in doing it and others don't. But boy, the ones that do continue to get better at a really good pace. And I hope the point of this podcast today is just to remind all of you, whether you're taking lessons or whether you're looking at taking lessons or whether you're working on your own golf swing yourself, you need that feedback. You need that communication. And I guess a few forms, making notes after your round of golf and your practice session. I use an app that I use to track all of my lessons, and some players just like to put some notes in there. Hit it good today because this drill really worked well. I have a question about this. Some people write down their scorecard, right? Just make a few notes, whether they track stats or different things like that. I have some people that, like after a practice session, they'll be in the parking lot and they'll turn their camera on and they'll talk essentially in the camera, but talking to me, and then they'll send me that video. A lot of them will send me golf swings. Don't keep that information in. This is your golf game. This is your improvement. I can only work with what I have. If you don't give me a lot, then give me a lot to work with. If you give me a lot, I have a lot to work with, and it can help sort through a lot of times some of the confusion and the misconceptions that we have. So, to summarize, the number one thing that separates the players of mine that improve a lot faster than the ones that don't is their communication. How often I'm getting feedback, how often we're communicating, them taking the initiative to send me information. That's the separator. And regardless of your ability level, regardless of what your goals are, I want you to keep that in mind as you go into this golf season. Whether I'm your golf coach and you're listening, whether you have another golf coach, whether you're getting a golf coach, what you put into opening up that communication channel, the more you'll get out of it. And if you have a coach that puts up barriers that they're not accessible, that's a whole nother thing. And maybe that's something you can consider while you're with that coach, but I'm not getting into that today. So I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. As always, I appreciate the support. Communicate with your coach. Let's get better. We'll see you next week. Happy golfing.